On May 9th, 2025, the Corsa Rosa begins, one of the most eagerly awaited cycling races for fans and non-fans alike. It covers a distance of more than 3,443 kilometers, spread over 21 days, with each favorite sensing the opportunity to don the pink jersey in Rome. The route is brutal. High mountains from early on, decisive time trials, and legendary passes such as the Stelvio, Gavia, and Monte Grappa. Only the most complete riders will survive. Among the title contenders is Primož Roglič, the Slovenian who is looking to finally conquer the Corsa Rosa despite his age. Juan Ayuso, young and brilliant, leads UAE Team Emirates with a hunger for his first Grand Tour victory. And Isaac del Toro as a luxury domestique. The Latino's Richard Carapaz, champion in 2019, returns with fire in his eyes. Always ready to attack when least expected. And Egan Bernal, after his spectacular crash, arrives determined to prove that his story in the Grand Tours is not over yet. Britain's Simon Yates and Italy's Antonio Tiberi are looking to spring a big surprise on the other favorites. The fight has just begun, the banquet is served, let the Giro begin. The 2025 Giro d'Italia got off to a powerful start from the coast of Durrës in these first three stages in Albania, with a 160-kilometer first stage full of speed, tension, and excitement. From the starting flag, the peloton set a relentless pace, neutralizing every breakaway attempt as the road to Tirana became a strategic battle. Just 5 kilometers from the finish line, tragedy struck hard. Mikel Landa, one of Spain's great hopes, suffered a hard fall that forced him to abandon the race amid gestures of pain and tears, leaving the heart of cycling heavy. In the final stretch, when everything pointed to a victory for Wout van Aert, Mads Pedersen emerged with tremendous force, overtaking him by inches, with a brutal comeback to claim an unforgettable victory and don the first pink jersey. Thus began the Giro, with glory, drama, and the promise of a sporting war that is just beginning. The other favorites did not suffer any mishaps. Primož versus Juan Ayuso, the battle that would rule the Giro, was yet to be seen in the following stages. In a vibrant city amid sharp turns and avenues roaring beneath their wheels, the world's best riders faced off against the relentless machine of time. 13.7 kilometers. One attempt, trois tours, no margin for error. After a crash that left Mikel Landa out of contention, the contenders for glory knew that this time trial would be a statement of power. And the first to speak was Josh Tarling, the young prodigy from Ineos, who set the asphalt ablaze. But the echo of his pedaling was not the only thing that resonated. Primož Roglič, the eternal hunter of Grand Tours, emerged like a titan. With every turn, with every push on the short climb to Sock, the Slovenian showed that he is in a league of his own. He didn't win the stage by a hair's breadth, just 1 second. But what he won was much more valuable. The Maglia Rosa. Behind him, Juan Ayuso fought like a warrior, but he lost 16 seconds, and with it, part of his moral advantage. The Giro had begun, and it already had a provisional winner. The battle is on, the mountains await, and the Giro is unforgiving. On the wild coastline of Albania, where mountains plunge into the sea and the wind roars like an ancient god, the Giro wrote an unforgettable chapter. 160 kilometers of fury. A route that shows no mercy, a hidden monster, the dreaded Cafa e Logarasa. 10 kilometers of relentless climbing that separates the strong from the immortal. The day began with 6 warriors on the attack, dreaming of glory from the breakaway. But the peloton showed no mercy. Little Trek, relentless as a well-trained army, took control of destiny. On the mountain, they broke ranks. And when they reached the coast, they transformed strategy into art. The world held its breath. And then, like a red flash, Mads Pedersen emerged from the wind and foam. With the fury of a Viking and the temper of a champion, he flew to victory. Second victory in 3 days. The Maglia Rosa back on his shoulders. A show of authority that shook the peloton. Wallonia was his kingdom. The sprint, his sword, and the Giro has yet to see the best. Stage 4 of the 2025 Giro d'Italia ignited passion and speed on Italian soil, bringing cyclists back to the heart of battle after a brief rest. From Alberobello, with its iconic trulli that appear as centuries-old guardians, to Lecce, a city of narrow streets and cobblestones, stretched 189 kilometers of flat terrain, an invitation to a spectacle of power and strategy. From the early stages, a brave rider, Francisco Muñoz, decided to challenge the peloton by launching a solo breakaway. For more than 130 kilometers, he resisted the wind, fatigue, and the relentless pursuit of the favorites. It was a battle of one man against all, an act of pure determination and courage. But the peloton, like an unstoppable machine, gradually closed the gap, setting the stage for the grand finale. The streets of Lecce became the theater where glory would be decided, with tight corners and cobblestones demanding technique and bravery. Nerves were stretched to the limit, crashes threatened the sprinters, and chaos began to take shape. And in the midst of this whirlwind emerged Casper van Uden, a young Dutchman of just 23 years, who with a burst of energy and precision found his way through his rivals. His sprint was an explosion of power and elegance, a statement of intent in his first Grand Tour victory. He overcame the heavyweights and made it clear that he is destined for great achievements. While youth shined, veteran Mads Pedersen fought to maintain his dominance with no changes in the general classification standings. In the 5th stage of the 2025 Giro d'Italia, riders faced a 151-kilometer route with a cumulative elevation gain of 1,550 meters, designed to test both sprinters and puncheurs. The route ran between the historic towns of Seglia Massapica and Matera, offering picturesque scenery and a technical challenge in the final kilometers. From the start, the peloton remained compact, with several breakaway attempts neutralized by the Little Trek team, which controlled the race in favor of its leader, Mads Pedersen. As the finish line in Matera approached, the narrow streets and sharp turns increased the tension, favoring riders with technical and explosive skills. In the final meters, Pedersen demonstrated his power and control, launching a decisive sprint that allowed him to cross the finish line alone. With this victory, the Dane completed his 3rd win in 5 stages, consolidating his position in the general classification and strengthening his Maglia Rosa. The stage also featured the performance of Luis Aular, Movistar team, who was competitive in the uphill finish, and Thomas Pidcock, Q36.5 Pro Cycling team, who continued to demonstrate his versatility on mixed terrain. Still no significant changes in the men's overall standings. In the 7th stage of the 2025 Giro d'Italia, cyclists faced a Musmoi 168-kilometer route with a cumulative elevation gain of 3,500 meters, crossing the Apennine Mountains in the Abruzzo region. The stage culminated in a mountain finish in Tagliacozzo, offering a first major test for the favorites in the general classification. From the start, the pace was high. The Red Bull Bora Hansgrohe team took control of the race. setting a strong pace that threw several riders off balance. However, in the final kilometers, the Lidl Trek team took the lead, neutralizing the breakaways and setting the stage for a mass finish. In the final meters, young Spaniard Juan Ayuso Guiucan, UAE Team Emirates, launched a decisive attack with 300 meters to go, dropping the rest of the favorites and crossing the finish line alone. This victory marked his first in a Grand Tour, consolidating his position as one of the most promising young talents in the peloton. 6. Despite not winning the stage, Slovenian Michael Primož Roglič, Kaja Moraes, Red Bull, Bora Hansgrohe finished in 4th place, regaining the Maglia Rosa. From the shores of the Adriatic in peaceful Giulianova, the Giro peloton set off for battle. The sea breeze was left behind, and before them rose the Apennines, waiting with their stone claws and impossible slopes. A day began that was more of an odyssey than a stage. With almost 3,800 meters of accumulated elevation gain, the route promised suffering and glory. The first few kilometers were an apparent respite, a false flat where dozens of cyclists tried to escape from the main group. At Roccafluvione, the intermediate sprint picked up the pace, but it was the climb to Quai, Croce di Casale, 7.7 kilometers at 4.5%, that began to separate the strong from the brave. And then came the Sacchi Sassotetto. Santa Maria Maddalena, the sleeping giant, awoke to test the riders' souls. 13 kilometers at 7.4%, an endless climb that touched the skies at over 1,465 meters. The race was not yet broken, but the faces already spoke of pain. Something big was coming. On the technical descent that followed, a breakaway of 19 men formed. Among them was a young Australian with a wild spirit, Sieur Luke Plapp. With 45 kilometers to go, in the middle of the climb to Montelago, 5.5 kilometers at 6.8%, Plapp stood up from his saddle and took off, without looking back. With strength, intelligence, and courage, he launched a solo attack that no one could match. Each pedal stroke was a statement of intent. It wasn't about participating, it was about making history. Plapp dominated the climbs, surfed the descents, and endured the punishment of his legs with a determination that only the chosen few know. While the Australian was weaving his solo feat, behind him the peloton was burning. The Italian and Diego Ulissi, a veteran and cerebral rider, saw his opportunity. He knew how to suffer on Sassotetto, held on in Galliola, and when he crossed the finish line in 3rd place, his effort was rewarded with the most precious gift. From the very first kilometer, the day promised to be historic. With 5 sections of sterrato and 15% gradients, the route between Gubbio and Siena transformed the Giro into a gladiatorial battle on white dirt.
Many, no doubt, as Pedersen with Giulio Ciccone on the front. Take over for Lidl Trek. Pedersen motoring on these, starting to hit the descent now.
And also Storer with a teammate from Tudor, well placed, right behind Primož Roglič. I think Taco van der Hoorn also a duo from opposite the Koenig.
Ineos Grenadiers took control. Early on, setting a brutal pace, they wanted war. They wanted the sterrato to speak, and it did. Amid the chaos, Egan Bernal, the reborn champion, attacked again, as in his heyday. First to punish, then to dream. Every move he made was a wake-up call. The Condor still flies. Meanwhile, other favorites suffered. Roglič fell and lost more than 2 minutes. Ayuso punctured and was cut off. Then the brave emerged. Wout van Aert, son of mud and wind, took the lead. Alongside him was a fearless young man, Isaac del Toro, a 21-year-old Mexican with a heart of steel. Juan Ayuso's squire after an attack by Bernal. He finished with a Vestial attack that left the Colombian behind, and only the Belgian could follow him.
And Del Toro just gets to the crest right now, and he's got no choice other than to push on. Here is Egan Bernal. It's been great to see this long road back for him. It still must feel like...
On the last climb, via Santa Catarina, 500 meters at 12%, they looked at each other. Del Toro attacked first, with everything he had. But Van Aert, experienced and explosive, responded with Flemish fury and crossed the finish line like a giant in Piazza del Campo. But the real blow was dealt by the future. All right. Isaac del Toro became the first Mexican to wear the pink jersey.